Hello, mathematicians, and welcome to day 3 of Trig. We are almost done with the unit. So before we start off, please make sure you have this green sheet in front of you and the trig ratios part 2 worksheet in front of you. So today we're continuing to talk about trig ratios, okay? And we're actually going to be talking about this small section down here called inverse trig. Before we start off, I would like it if you guys could cross this one out and this one out. I accidentally made a typo right there. So, before we start off, let's talk about how we teach math. So, when we teach you in math, I'm gonna write here. So, when we teach you in math, we teach you how to go forwards and backwards. If we teach you how to add, we teach you how to subtract. We teach you how to multiply, then we teach you how to divide. If we teach you how to square, we teach you how to square root, right? And these pairs also undo each other, right? So, same thing with sine. These are a function, okay? So this is just like adding or multiplying. This has its own set of rules. So it also has one that undoes each other, and it is called inverse. So right here on your piece of paper, I would like it if you wrote this -1 exponent. This means inverse. So when you take the inverse of the sine, they cancel out and you get x by itself, okay? And all three of them have this. So if you have cosine, and let's say you want to cancel cosine, so pretend you want to get x by itself, what you would do is you would apply its inverse. And when you apply its inverse, you're going to get only x because they cancel each other out. Similarly with tan, if you had tan, and let's say you want to get rid of tan and just get x by itself, then you would apply the inverse of tan and you get x by itself. You're probably going, what? Don't worry, this is going to be something that you have to practice in order to get a hang of, okay? And you'll see its application. So once you're done here, let's slide on over here. So trig ratios part 2, find the measure of x round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to write my steps over here on the right hand side. Give me a second. So I'll put steps. All right, my first step is always to draw it, especially in geometry, okay? So it's already drawn with us. So the next step would be to label our triangle. And with that, I mean with the vocabulary we've been using, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So remember that the opposite of this squared is always going to be the hypotenuse. This is our angle here, right? So the opposite of our angle is going to be opposite. And then adjacent is always a little bit trickier, but it's the last one, so it's obviously this side is adjacent. Okay, next up, we're going to locate or identify the trig function. The trig function needed. So here we have hypotenuse, right? And we have adjacent. So I'm going to go over here. Hypotenuse and adjacent is going to be cosine. Okay, so we're going to use cosine of our angle is going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Our next step is we're going to fill in the information that we have. Fill in information or info given. So here, this is going to do the math. So I have cosine, and my angle this time is x. So cosine of, oops, what is going on? Well, that was a weird glitch. Cosine x equals adjacent 47 divided by hypotenuse, 58. All right, so now we are just going to do math. So math or isolates x, get x by itself. So if you notice in the last trig ratio section, we always had x on the side, right? So right here is on the side, right here is on the side. This trig ratios part 2 deals with when we have x as the angle. So this is where we're going to apply trig ratios. I mean our inverse trig, okay? I need to get this x by itself. So what I need to do is I need to cancel out cosine. A lot of you guys think that cosine and x are multiplying. So you're going to get tempted to do this. No, that is a big fat no, okay? And it will give you an automatic 0. Cosine and x are not multiplying. X and cosine are cosining, okay? It's literally like when you have 2 plus 2, they're adding. X is cosining. It's an operation. So to get rid of cosine, we have to do its opposite, which is the inverse. So I'm going to apply the inverse over here, and this is how you write it. Then I'm going to write everything on my left-hand side. But remember, what I do on one side, I have to do to the other. I have to balance the equation out. So I also have to do inverse over here. If you need to, pause and take a look at this, because a lot of learners do that. They have to pause and kind of understand what's going on. But if you notice, everything I wrote here is right in the parentheses, and everything I wrote here is in this parentheses, okay? I just applied cosine to it. So now what happens is that inverse cosine is going to cancel out cosine, okay? They cancel each other out, which is what we wanted, right? We want to get x by itself. So what I'm left with on my left-hand side is just x. Congrats, it worked. And on my right-hand side, nothing canceled out with cosine inverse, right? It doesn't have cosine there. So we're stuck with cosine inverse over here. Went. So you might be thinking, okay, what do I do here? Calculator work. So you're going to go to your calculator. Again, I highly recommend the Google one. And first off, if you notice, I'm set on the wrong units, so I'm going to go to degrees. Now, if you look on the calculator, there is no inverse cosine, right? But there's this button called INV. It stands for inverse. You're going to hit it, and bam, there they are, the inverses. So I'm going to hit that. And on the calculator, it's going to say arc cosine. That's just another way to say inverse, okay? It's the same thing. Oop. So I'm going to do inverse cosine of 47 divided by 58. I get 35.87. I'm going to round. So my answer is 35.9. And since this is an angle, it is degrees. So my angle is going to be 35.9 degrees. Okay, cool. And we're done. All right, so let's go ahead and try the second one. So again, find the measure of x. I'm not going to write my steps down this time. It's already drawn, so I'm going to label my sides. Right here is my angle. This is opposite automatically. This is hypotenuse. And this is adjacent. So I am working with opposite and hypotenuse. That is, I believe, sine. Yes. So I'm using sine of my angle is opposite over hypotenuse. So now I'm going to fill in my information. Sine of x equals my opposite, which is 7.2, divided by my hypotenuse, which is 9.4. Last step, I have to isolate x. Since x is trapped with a sign, remember, sine and x are a package deal. You cannot separate them unless you use the inverse. So I'm going to be using the inverse of sine. I'm going to do sine inverse. And what do I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Awesome. Sine inverse and sine cancel each other out because they are opposites. So, fruit, fruit. Awesome, because we achieved our goal of getting x by itself. But unfortunately, on the left-hand side, there's nothing that sine inverse can cancel out with. So we're left with them there. And now we use a calculator. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the right units, degrees. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to hit inverse and then sine. I'm going to do 7.2 divided by 9.4. And I get that. If I round to the nearest tenth, that 9's going to be bumped up to the other 9. So my answer is 50. But we're measuring an angle, so it is 50 degrees. So my answer is 50 degrees. And that is it. Go ahead and jump onto Delta Math and get some practice done. And remember to have the calculator opened up and ready to go. I'll see you next video.